Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon for a presentation on why working the polls matters. This presentation comes to you from the League of Women Voters of Arizona and All Voting is Local Arizona. We welcome you all to this, to the presentation. We have embarked for the last 2 years on helping our county elections departments recruit poll workers. And this is in the context of two very important initiatives for the league. One is to provide all the support we can to the county elections administrators, and more importantly, to ensure that we have safe environments for poll workers and the voters, and to fight as much as we can mis and disinformation, and to elevate the amazing work that our elections administrators do. So with that in mind, I want to identify our I want to say welcome to you all, and we'll do a quick introduction of our two speakers, because actually we have a member of our league who is going to be introducing Lauren. Lauren, she actually works as a poll worker in your department. And then, of course, I have the privilege to introducing Scott. But the first thing we want to do is to tell you about us, the two organizations, and the work we do. The League of Women Voters of Arizona, we envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. For 100+ years, we have been a nonpartisan activist grassroots organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy. The League neither supports nor opposes any political party or candidates for elected office. I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Lugo, who is going to tell us about All Voting is Local, a very, very important partner in this fight. And her organization has provided tremendous leadership in the area of defending democracy. Amanda, thank you for joining us. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda, A-M-A-N-D-A, Lugo, L-U-G-O. My pronouns are she, her, Aya. I am the Arizona Grassroots Manager with All Voting is Local and All Voting is Local Action. We work to remove barriers to the ballot, increase voting for eligible voters, ensure fair rules for registering to vote and casting a ballot, and support efforts to restore federal protections for the right to vote. No matter our color, zip code, gender, or sexuality, all Arizonans deserve greater access to the ballot and stronger voter protections. Thank you so much for sharing your Saturday afternoon with us.
Thank you, Amanda. We're going to move on to introducing our speakers. And I forgot the request of our viewer that we introduce ourselves. So I shall do that at this time. My name is Penny Sharon, and I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Phoenix, which is a local chapter of the league. And I'm also the president-elect of the state league. And my role in the state is as the state advocacy chair. In addition to that, I've been a poll worker in Scott Jarrett's department for longer than I can remember. And I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to actually introduce Scott. And a shout out to Betty Gallenter, who I also work with closely. Scott Jarrett, as you all know, has been our Elections Day director and has done an incredible job in ensuring that we had the most secure elections, that our elections are run smoothly with integrity. And we are very grateful for not only the work he does, but the work and the courage with which all of our elections administrators have demonstrated since 2018, 2020, 2022. So we are grateful for their work in protecting our democracy. Scott brings tremendous credentials to his job and his responsibility. If you have been working in the as a volunteer, as a deputy registrar, or as a poll worker, or even in the election protection coalition, you know Scott, because he is responsive, he picks up the phone, and he's there to help solve problems. So we are fortunate in Maricopa County to have Scott and his team. And Betty, who you all can see, Betty Gallanter, works in his team, and we're so excited that she is here giving up her Sunday. Thank you very much. I'm going to call on Lorraine, if you will please turn on your video.
Okay, I'm Lorraine West, and I'm Director of Voter Services for the League of Women Voters of Central Yavapai County. And as Penny indicated, since I moved to Arizona 4 years ago, I have served as a poll worker for 4 elections in Yavapai County. The first was the presidential preference election in March of 2020, and most recently, the general election of last year in November. Now, I found that the days are long for a poll worker, but it is very rewarding to help ensure that there's a smooth and successful experience for voters in your community. And I have fellow league members who have played other roles in helping to prepare for the elections in Yavapai County. So I find today's program to be very important and relevant. So it's my pleasure to introduce Lauren Custis. Ms. Custis was named Yavapai County Elections Director in November 2022. She was appointed to this position by a unanimous vote of the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors. Prior to her appointment as Elections Director, Ms. Custis had been the Program Administrator for voter registration and early voting in Yavapai County. She held that position since 2015. And prior to that, she had served as the Education Elections Coordinator and Administrative Assistant to Yavapai County School Superintendent, and that work commenced in 2012. So she brings a minimum of a decade of experience to her current role. So Lauren, welcome, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you, Penny, and thank you, Amanda, for inviting me. This is a really great opportunity to showcase what we do here in Maricopa and Yavapai County.
So I am now going to turn it over to Lauren and Scott, who have a tag team planned in their presentation. So I will leave it to you both to decide who speaks and who doesn't. And I'm going to turn off my video so the focus is on you both, okay? Folks, in our meeting today, you are hearing from Lauren Custis from the Yavapai County Elections and Scott Jarrett from the Maricopa County Elections. Thank you both. Turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Penny. So as Penny said, I am Scott Jarrett. I am the Maricopa County Elections Director. And I just want to express my appreciation for this opportunity to be able to speak with you and the League of Women's Voters and All Voting is Local. The contributions from your organizations have been amazing to Maricopa County, but democracy as a whole. And I do like to tell a story about how I first met Penny. Well, she had been working as a poll worker for us long before, but after the 2020 election cycle, Maricopa County was going through lots of calls for audits of the 2020 election. Our board of supervisors proactively leaned into having some audits. We contracted with something called a voting system testing laboratory. Those are organizations that are accredited through the National Institute of Technology and also the Elections Assistance Commission. So that's a federal organization that certifies all tabulation equipment at the federal level. And we invited those organizations to come in and do an audit of our election equipment to make sure that there was no malware that was installed, that our equipment had never connected to the internet, and that our equipment was programmed accurately. And so I needed some volunteers to come help us insert some ballots into our tabulators as part of our logic and accuracy tests. We needed enough ballots to get over 1 million different ballot positions. I called Penny, I said, I need some help. And she rallied the troops and got a bunch of individuals from the league to come and assist us. So thank you for that, Penny. So now we'll go get started with the presentation. Again, I am Scott Jarrett. I am the Maricopa County Elections Director, but both Lauren and I also have another role. We serve as officers of the Elections Officials of Arizona. And that is an organization that represents the 15 county election directors and their teams. So we, on a monthly basis, we meet, we talk about best practices, we share how we can improve our processes, but we're in contact much more frequently than that through email and other types of items. And I will say, if you haven't met Lauren before, you're in for a great treat. She's an all-star in our world. So
Thank you, Scott. All right.
okay, if we can go to the next slide.
Oh.
So it shouldn't come to news to anyone that our America and our democracy are facing some significant challenges now. And some of those challenges are relatively recent. Some of them have been around for decades, and some of them even have precursors going back to our origins as when we were forming our country. But one of the biggest challenges that we are facing is trust and this concept of trust. Now, trust in elections, while that is a challenge right now, we're not the only institution that's going through and having these challenges. One of those is our court system and our judicial system. We have another institution, our library systems, our public education system, our public health system, and law enforcement. And really, no matter where you land on the political spectrum, we're all starting to begin to question whether we can have trust in these institutions. Now, some individuals within our society maybe have more distrust than others, and also it maybe depends on which institution we're discussing. But one of the things that I see as in my role is in election administration is if we have strong and sound elections, then we are really that stitching that holds our fabric together. And I sort of look at our democracy as like our American flag, right? It's all these unique threads that come together. It's the different colors of our flags. And as a single entity or a single item, they don't mean a lot. But when they all come together as one, then it's very magnificent and it's very strong. But it's really the elections that sort of keep all of that stitched together. And in that capacity, and why that maybe places a lot of pressure on us as election officials, it also makes me very optimistic of where we are as a country, as also in an election system. And the reason I'm so optimistic is because I look at actually the slide in front of me, right? And these are actually some pictures of some real poll workers in Maricopa County. So these are some individuals that come out every single election cycle. They usually work as our inspectors in our voting locations. And when I've had conversations with these individuals, I see the richness of their experiences, right? The diversity of who they are, not only on the political spectrum. Yes, we have highly partisan Republicans and highly partisan Democrats and moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats and independents all coming out to support elections, but also the diversity in their experiences that come to assist us as we administer elections. So in Maricopa County, we are hiring well over 2,000 poll workers to support us in these large elections. We'll have over 600 central boards that support those elections. And it's really the members of the community, right? And they are a perfect mirror or reflection. So those individuals that are working in those capacities, they're a reflection of our community as a whole. And that is what gives me so much hope. But it doesn't mean we can ignore the real risks and threats that we are experiencing in the elections world. So if we can go to the next slide. And I mentioned one of those areas is trust. So why is trust such a challenge, right? And so Lauren and I actually just recently, we hosted a conference for those election officials of Arizona. And in that conference, we had a presenter that talked about a concept, mis and disinformation. And so this is really inaccurate information that swirls around on the internet and social media. And one of the statements that this presenter made was, mis and disinformation can go around the world twice by the time facts can get out of bed in the morning. And that's really true because, right, a salacious headline, there's bamboo in Maricopa County's ballots, right, that could go around the world. And then we have to, as election officials, try to get an understanding of what is it they're saying and why they may be drawing this conclusion. And then we have to then publish out accurate information. And I really sort of think of this as sort of the zoo of elections, right? So we've always had, a elephant for Republicans. We've had a donkey for Democrats. We've had a porcupine for Libertarians. But now we have panda bears for bamboo. We have chickens for shredded ballots, right? Where they're saying we fed these shredded ballots to chickens. We have mules for people dropping off ballots at our drop boxes. We have dinosaurs for dinos. We have rhinoceroses for rhinos. So this whole zoo of misinformation. And the purpose of this presentation is why it's important to work in elections. And one of the reasons is because of this mis and disinformation. So as election officials and as poll workers that are getting involved, you can actually learn a great degree about how we administer elections. So in Maricopa County, we provide a program called a premium poll worker training, 2 days of how we serve voters at our voting locations. So if you want to come and work as a poll worker, you're going to get an immense amount of training of why you should have trust in this process. If you wanted to come work at our central count facility, we have lots of temporary workers, and we'll talk about those as we progress through the slide. Then you can learn information about how we secure ballots at our central count facility, how we manage chain of custody, how we ensure accuracy and reliability. So that is all a great value, not only to help us administer, but then you're learning those processes. And one of the challenges is, right, there's not a lot of trust in these institutions right now, whether it is, right, the government themselves. So Lauren and I represent that government as election administrators. But you as poll workers or central boards, you are members of the community. Lauren and I are too, but right, you are friends, family, neighbors, right? And as you're having conversations about elections, and right, it is a hot topic nowadays, the things that you learn that you can help us combat this disinformation. So we can go to the next slide. So why is it important to get involved? Well, we talked a little bit about helping us overcome those challenges with disinformation, but also we have a 2024 election cycle coming up very quickly. So our first big large-scale election is going to be our March presidential preference election. Then we'll follow up with our August primary election, then a November general election. So across the entire state of Arizona, we're going to be looking for over 4,000 different poll workers, right, to support those county election offices. But we'll also be looking for over 1,200 election workers to work out of our central counting facilities. So we need a mobilization of our community to come help us, right? We face some hiring challenges, especially in those central board working environments, lots of inflationary pressures. For example, we usually pay anywhere from $16 to $18 for some of those here in Maricopa County for some of those roles at our central count facilities. But now at a fast food restaurant, you can easily make more than that. So we are working with our board to try to increase those rates. Also, we get lots of feedback, like the hours get very, very long, especially on that election day. So that is a challenge. So one of the ways that we're doing, trying to address that in Maricopa County is we've established, and Penny mentioned Betty Galanter. She's our voter outreach manager. She's been in the trenches trying to create a brand new student poll worker program, right? To really get those students involved that can work and also assist in those long hours and packing up that equipment at the very end of the day. We're also dealing with very complex technical processes and a politicized environment. So those are some of the challenges. But one of the things is we do pay, right? A lot of people think poll workers are just volunteers. No, we do pay them while they're performing that civic duty. They are able to earn additional salary. And it usually comes in August and November. So as we're heading into those holidays, right, maybe a little bit more money to get us through that end of the year. Maricopa County, we've been hiring some professional trainers to assist us in training our poll workers. And then we've been really rolling out, I mentioned that premium poll worker training course, but all counties have been taking advantage of hybrid training. So using computer-based training for their poll workers, as well as that in-person learning training. And then the other thing we've been adding is, because of that politicized environment, a lot of de-escalation and customer service training for our poll workers. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Lauren to take over for the next few slides, and then we will go back and forth a little bit.
Thank you, Scott. So one of the main topics that you've asked us to speak about is, why is it important to work the polls? So I got a little curious and did some digging and found some information about poll workers in an election for George Washington on July 24th of 1758. So far as back as I could find, but it could go back farther, not sure. But all of these dedicated individuals assist voters in fulfilling their civil rights in casting a ballot. Election officials of Arizona could not conduct election day voting without the help of these dedicated individuals. So again, in my curiosity, I wanted to see if I could find any information as to how far back could I find that someone has served as a poll worker. Well, lo and behold, according to Wikipedia, Laura Wooten, when she passed, she was 99, in Mercer County, New Jersey, served for 79 continuous years. I think that's really impressive. And again, you know, folks who serve that long are just bringing up the next generation of poll workers. You know, they're really training those folks and getting that interest in what we do and democracy. So we do ask a lot of our poll workers. So they must be registered to vote in the county in which they wish to be a poll worker. They have to fill out an online application. They have to be of the same party affiliation since the last general election. So we can't have people switching parties. They have to be able to work the polls beginning at 5:30 a.m. through the completion of the night audit. And that's about 14 to 15 hours. They need to be neutral regarding elections and candidates. They may not wear any election related clothing or insignia. They have to have the ability to sit or stand for extended periods of time, the ability to lift 25 pounds, and be prepared to assist any voter. So we have several different positions when it comes to poll workers. So we have at a vote center, we have a board that's made up of the inspector, judges, marshal, and clerks. And I'm going to go into discussing each of those positions. So if you will, the top person in the vote center is going to be the inspector, and they are there to supervise the vote center and the poll workers. They are going to arrange and set up the vote center. They're responsible for all the equipment and making sure everything is secure. They are to assist poll workers in their duties. They oversee all aspects of the voting process. They need to be able to help with each task within the vote center. They may be able to fill in for a vote center if someone needs to have a break or go to lunch. They will fill in for those positions. They will address procedural issues. They will help voters who need additional assistance. They will work with the election day technician to call the the call center. Or Scott, what is your call center called?
So Lauren, yeah, we call our command center. So this
Command
is, then we have a virtual, and I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation.
All right, so in Yavapai County, we call it the call center. So if there's an issue going on at the vote center, they need help with anything, they will call our call center. They will prepare the end of the night returns, securing and sealing all sensitive equipment, and they will ensure that the vote center is clean and returned to its original state.
So the inspectors are the supervisors of the location, as Lauren said. But one thing that's important is state statute requires we try to achieve bipartisan representation through all of our voting locations. But also, in addition to that, when we hire our inspectors, they would like us to get as close as possible to an equal number of Republicans and Democrats serving in that inspector role. So one of the things that when we're hiring, we're keeping track of how many Republican and Democrat inspectors we're hiring. Doesn't mean that libertarians can't serve in that role, or that independents can't serve in that role, or party not declared. It's just when we hire a Republican or Democrat, we need to be cognizant that we're trying to get an equal number throughout the entire county at all of our different vote centers. And in addition, and Lauren will get through the marshal's role. When you hire an inspector from one party and one of the largest two parties, we're really trying to make that same effort to hire than the marshal of the opposite party. So, okay, go ahead, Lauren.
All right, so the marshal, you're going to find the marshal maintaining order in the vote center. So they must be, and again, just as Scott mentioned, they must be registered in an opposite party of the inspector. They're going to set up the monitors. They're going to set up and monitor and take down all the signage that's outside the vote center and inside the vote center. They're going to set up and take down all of the ADA equipment. They're going to announce the opening and the closing of the polls promptly at 6 a.m. and promptly at 7 p.m. They're going to patrol the vote center inside and out and check for any electioneering taking place within the 75-foot limit. If anyone is electioneering within the 75-foot limit, they will be asking them to move outside the limit and notify the inspector. They're going to clean up any electioneering material left inside a voting booth or outside on the ground, or any signs that are out. Of course, again, we want to make sure that that voting location is left in the state that we found it. We don't want to leave additional materials hanging around. They're going to manage the voter line. They're going to keep track of the wait times. They're going to inform the inspector if there is a longer wait time than 15 minutes. And they're going to assist in closing procedures and assist anywhere else that is needed at the end of the night.
And then the one thing, Lauren mentioned a term called electioneering. And essentially that's when someone's trying to provide materials or advertise a certain position on a proposition or question on the ballot, encourage a voter to vote particularly one way or another for a candidate on the ballot. So, and that is allowed as part of the election process, right? But it has to be outside that 75-foot limit. And it can't occur within it. And that's based on our state statutes that limits that to provide so that someone can't influence a voter as they're actively engaging in that voting process.
All right, and the next position we have is a ballot judge. So the ballot judge is responsible for issuing the correct paper ballot to voters. So along with the inspector, they're going to count and record the total number of blank ballot stock received at the vote center. So we keep track of every piece of blank ballot stock. We consider it money. It is money. We want to make sure that whatever was given to the vote center, that those ballots that are voted and whatever is left should equal the number that was given. Anything that's been spoiled is accounted for. They're going to issue the correct paper ballot to voters using the information on the voter ticket. So when the voter signs in and they are given a voter ticket, the ballot judge is going to look at that ticket and make sure that the correct ballot style is being given to the voter. They're going to work with the ballot box judge to complete any closing tasks. They're going to empty the ballot box at the end of the night. They're going to hand count the paper ballots and the ballot marking device ballots. Those are the ADA ballots that we use as the ballot marking device. They're going to check the paper ballots have vote center stamps. We make sure that we mark each ballot with a red stamp indicating the vote center, so we can keep those separate from each of the vote centers when we're in the tabulation room. We load the ballots into transfer bags. We're going to assist others with closing procedures as needed, and then they will work with the ballot judge only if needed to drive the election night returns to the central count location or to the regional center location designated for that particular vote center. Anything additional, Scott? All right, moving on. So the next position in the vote center is the ballot box judge. The ballot box judge is responsible for monitoring the ballot box and reading and providing a second chance voting script. So a second chance voting script is a reminder to each voter that when they're depositing their ballot into the ballot box, they're actually casting their vote at that point, that once they drop that ballot into the ballot box, there's no going back. So they want to remind each voter that they need to look over their ballot, make sure they didn't make any mistakes, that they've looked over, they've voted for every candidate they wish to vote for, and then go ahead and cast that ballot, and then they're done. So again, they're going to inform the voters that once they have put their ballot into the ballot box, their vote is cast and they're unable to make any changes. They're going to hand out I voted stickers to the voters. They're going to work with the ballot judge to complete closing tasks. They're going to empty the ballot box with the ballot judge. They're going to hand count those paper ballots and the ballot marking device ballots. They're going to check to make sure that each ballot has a vote center stamp. They're going to load those ballots into the transfer bags. They're going to assist with other closing procedures. And again, with the ballot judge, they're going to drive those election night returns to the central location or to a regional center that's designated for that vote center.
And here's one thing I just wanted to highlight is why all counties are following the exact same laws, and then something called the Elections Procedures Manual. There is wiggle room for counties to administer elections to meet their certain challenges or how they're going to administer elections within their jurisdiction. So in Maricopa County, we actually have on-site tabulators at our voting locations, right? So here, as Lauren's describing this, they don't have an on-site tabulator at something we call a precinct-based tabulator. They do all of their counting at the central count processing. And in Maricopa County, we do all of our early ballots. If a provisional ballot, after it's researched and it's determined it can be counted, it's also counted at central count. But on election day at the voting location, we have those on-site tabulators where someone would be inserting their ballot. And so we don't have a statement that's being read similar to Yavapai County because our on-site tabulator is actually informing the voter if they had an overvote on their ballot. We do have labels on our ballot boxes next to our tabulators explaining what an overvote is and what happens. But so this is something how Yavapai complies with federal laws. So to ensure that a voter is aware of what would happen if they overvoted their ballot. So an overvote is you have a contest. Usually, for the most part, they're vote for ones, but there are some times where they're like a vote for two. And if someone filled in more ovals than what's allowed to. So if it was a vote for one and they filled in 2 ovals, then the reading of that statement in Yavapai County, that would alert the voter to identify, oh, I did overvote. And then they can make that determination whether they'd spoil that ballot and get a new one issued to them to drop it in the ballot box. Maricopa County, the tabulator itself informs the vote. Thank you, Lauren.
Of course. So the next position is the BMD clerk, and that is the ballot marking device clerk. And of course, we have ballot marking devices to accommodate our ADA community. These people are going to assist the voters who are voting, who choose to vote, and anyone can use the ballot marking device. It's not just for the ADA community. Anyone is able to use it. So they're going to set up the BMDs following the instructions. They're going to confirm that the machine info report is printed. They're going to confirm that the machine open report is printed. They're going to use the voters bring over their voter ticket, and they're going to bring up the correct ballot for each of the voters. They're going to answer any questions regarding the use of the ballot marking device. So if there's any questions on how to actually use the device, they're going to direct voters to take their ballot that is printed by the BMD and insert it into the ballot box or the provisional envelope. They're going to place all the voter tickets or QR code tickets into the voter ticket envelope. So no one walks out with their ticket. We keep all their tickets. They're going to complete their closing task per their duty card. They're going to close all of the BMDs and they're going to lock and seal them at the end of the evening. With the inspector, complete the required reports and assist others in their closing procedures as needed. All right, and then we have the EDT, and that is called the Election Day Technician. They are responsible for on-site assistance with setup, breakdown, any troubleshooting of electronic equipment, and technical assistance to the poll workers. Assist the inspector and poll workers in setting up all election equipment, provides technical and troubleshooting assistance throughout the day, serves as the lead poll book clerk, and is an advanced user. So in Yavapai County, the advanced user are people who are going to be able to assist with provisional voters, anyone who's spoiling a ballot and getting another ballot issued to them. They're going to notify the call center and fill out required reports to document any malfunctioning or damaged poll books, ballot marking devices, BODs, which is our ballot on demand printers, or networking equipment, even if the situation is resolved. We want to know that there was an issue. We want to be able to use that information as we cover how things went, how, at the end of the election, we want to do we kind of call it a post-mortem as to what happened and how can we prevent that from happening again, kind of situation. So even if the problem is resolved that night, we still want to know that it happened. So this person, the EDT, is going to use the poll books for trouble tickets. They're going to report issues to the call center. They're going to assist the provisional clerk, and they're going to print the poll list from the electronic poll books at the end of the night. So the electronic poll books are the actual device that when you're coming in, Scott has a little something different on that, but we use 10X poll books, and that is what we check voters in on to assure that they live at the correct address, that we're giving them the right party ballot, they're getting the right ballot style. So the EDT will perform closing night procedures and assist others as needed. Scott?
Thanks, Lauren. And yeah, this is another area that we're slightly different. So we call these individuals very, very similar role, but we call them T-techs or temporary technicians. And they do all these really exact same tasks to help our poll workers. Right. One of the challenges that I had mentioned was now with our vote center model, which is fantastic. Voters really like it. Our poll workers really like it. Right. The number one complaint for a in-person voter nationwide used to be they were at the wrong voting location. With vote centers, you no longer have someone in a wrong voting location. But what you've done is you've added technology into that voting location. So what both Yavapai County and Maricopa County and many other counties throughout Arizona, we hire these individuals, the EDTs or RT techs, to assist those poll workers with that technology when they're setting up and breaking down the voting locations and then bringing everything back for those inspections. So thank you, Lauren.
Mhm. All right, and then we're going to have a provisional clerk, and the provisional clerk is responsible for assisting voters who are voting a provisional or conditional provisional ballot. So let's cover what a provisional ballot is. If someone is not registered in the correct party, if they've changed their address and their address doesn't match, if they conditional provisional, they would vote that if they did not bring any form of ID to the voting location. So this person is going to help them. They're going to use the electronic poll book to process a provisional voter. They're going to prepare the provisional envelope per the requirements by law. They're going to ensure that the provisional voter returns the ballot to the provisional ballot station rather than placing it into the regular ballot box. That we keep those sequestered because they go back to voter registration so that they can look up and confirm the information provided on the provisional envelope and make sure that we can either accept that ballot or we would reject that ballot for whatever reason they weren't registered. And that seems to be the biggest reason why we reject provisional ballots, is that the voter did not register prior to the deadline. They're going to place the envelope containing that provisional ballot into the alternative ballot box. They're going to present the voter with a provisional receipt. That receipt gives them information on how they can provide their ID. If it's a conditional provisional ballot, it gives them information on where they can go to see if their vote actually counted. And they're going to perform closing procedures and assist others as needed. Anything additional, Scott?
Well, I did get a question from Penny, and maybe she's going to ask this at the end, but she wanted clarification on if a independent or party not declared voter can serve as an inspector. So when we're talking about the provisional clerk, but they can. It's only when we have an inspector hired from one of the two largest parties, but then we have to have the opposite party for the marshal. But we can have independent voters or party not declared working in that inspector role.
All right. Now we have the EPB clerk. So the EPB is considered the electronic poll book. Again, we use 10X and Scott uses something slightly different. This person will check in voters in the vote center using the electronic poll book. They will help set up and arrange the vote center and set up the poll books prior to the beginning of the 6 a.m. They will get confirmation from the election day technician that the call center has confirmed that the network is connected. They make sure that the poll book is connected to the ballot on demand printer. So in Yavapai County, we use ballot on demand. That means that the voter, all the ballot styles are loaded into our electronic poll book so that when a voter comes in and they're in a particular precinct, that precinct ballot will be printing on the BOD. And it will show on the voter ticket so that the ballot judge can confirm that that ticket and that ballot is right for that voter. They're going to check all the voter IDs. They're going to use the EPBs to process voters into the vote center. They're going to offer the voter a choice of paper ballot or the option to vote on the ballot marking device. They're going to give the voter their voter ticket. They're going to direct the voter to the correct poll worker to get their ballot. They're going to complete any closing tasks per their duty card. They're going to put the poll book into the transfer case and seal it at the end of the evening. And they're going to assist others in closing procedures as needed. All right, and then we also have poll workers that we slate as alternatives. So we will fill all of our positions at each of the vote centers, but sometimes there's an emergency, someone gets sick, for whatever reason, they can't make it. And we will have these folks on call through the morning of the election so that we can fill those slots at a moment's notice. They will complete all online and in-person training. They will, we usually know, I mean, sometimes we'll have those a morning of emergencies, but generally we'll have moved them into regular positions well before election day. And of course, these folks are a little bit special because they need to know all of the roles of the folks who are at the vote center, because we just don't know which role we're going to ask them to participate. So all that I've discussed is not comprehensive. The comprehensive job descriptions are included in the online poll worker training and on the duty cards provided to all of our poll workers.
And that's a important concept, right? Because as Lauren was going through all those bullets, right, it sounds incredibly complex, and it is complex for our poll workers. They've got a very important role, right? But we recognize how challenging it is. So as Lauren described, these duty cards, and that's what the next slide is going to show, we as election officials across the whole entire state, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. So here's a few examples of different checklists we create, those duty cards for the different jobs that each inspector has. We create them like checklists. So, oh, I've got to do this, and they can check it off as they go through and they progress through their job, trying to make their role as easy as possible for them to be able to complete.
So other positions that we have available are troubleshooters. They provide support for multiple sites. They work closely with inspectors to manage the locations, provide supplies and updates from the elections department, are the first call to handle issues with equipment, electioneering, observers, and other situations that pop up. So I think in Maricopa County, they're called troubleshooters. In Yavapai County, we call them rovers. So we will have rovers assigned to a certain number of vote centers in a region, and those folks will be available, stationed centrally, so that if there's an issue at those vote centers, they will be able to be right there.
And the troubleshooters are so invaluable to the process. So if you think about, and I used to work in retail when I was in high school, right? And we'd have a process, and we might have an upset customer about that process. And me as that person working the retail, I'll explain that process, and that person doesn't like the answer. And so then we go and get the supervisor. If the supervisor provides the same exact process, usually then that would resolve the customer's concern. So that's what the troubleshooter sort of, even though the inspector is the supervisor of the location, if they're dealing with an upset voter, and then that inspector describes that process and they're still not satisfied, you can call in the troubleshooter or the rover who's trained exactly like the poll workers are, then they can provide that feedback or that same response. And that usually helps alleviate a lot of concerns that have come up in the voting location.
So other roles that we have as support staff, we have to have members, staff members, staff the call center or the command central, correct? Is that right? We need to have additional seasonal staff work at our warehouse, just for that additional help hands on election day, deliver that equipment, well, days before actually. We have Scott has ballot couriers. Explain that, Scott. What is a ballot courier?
Yeah, so during early voting, so that's another area that does report up to me. So in Arizona, we can have 27 days of early voting, where that's an in-person site where if a voter shows up, they can get an early ballot issued to them. It does go into an affidavit envelope. It still has to be signature verified by the recorder's office, and then ultimately gets sent to central count. But so in Maricopa County, usually 27 days before an election, we'll have 10 to 12 locations open. 2 weeks before election day, we'll have approximately 50 locations open. The day before election day, we'll have over 100 locations. So we have to send out a bipartisan team, a Republican and a Democrat, out to those voting locations to retrieve those ballots. So, and there's a lot of chain of custody forms that are completed as part of that process. And those are our ballot couriers, those roles. And we actually work fairly closely with the political parties themselves. So those county chairs from each of the parties to make appointments into this role if they choose to. If they don't choose to, then we'll make sure that we hire from the correct or applicable party.
And in Yavapai County, we call them travel boards. Not really sure how that came to be, but it's just something we do. And because they're out traveling, they're together bipartisan in a car. We also use those people if we have a voter who needs assistance in voting their ballot, or they need to register to vote. Someone who is a shut-in, who can't get out. We will send that travel board when they're on their way to pick up ballots. We'll have them stop off when it's convenient to assist a voter. So we've got warehouse drivers and, of course, T-techs or election day technicians here in Yavapai.
And those, I will say, one of the hardest positions for us to hire are those warehouse drivers. So in Maricopa County, we hire these election cycles 60 different warehouse drivers. So we send them out in teams of 2. And they help with set up really those deliveries of all of our vote centers. And as part of that process, we'll rent every 26-foot box truck that we can get our hands on. So if you're trying to move in the month of October or November, it's going to be difficult because we're going to try to rent those trucks.
And that's why we had to beg Enterprise up here in Yavapai County to get us a couple liftgate trucks, because we're competing against Mr. Jarrett here as far as trucks that are available for rental. So, and we don't employ drivers. We actually contract with our public works department, and they are CDL approved drivers, and we want those certified drivers driving those trucks. So we actually have those drivers drive our equipment with our workers. So, all right. So poll worker training and pay. Training, we require all poll workers to take online training prior to election day. We will have that up and running. They can log in at their own time. They can do it whenever it's convenient for them, but it has to be done prior to election day. All poll workers are required to attend an in-person training prior to election day, and we will have several times in several locations that's convenient. They're required to attend their pre-election meeting, which is the day before election day, the Monday prior. That's when they set up all the equipment, they test everything, make sure everything is working. And then, of course, we require them to work on election day beginning at 5:30 in the morning, all the way through the end of the evening, again, 15-hour day. Poll worker pay. I'm sure Yavapai County and Maricopa County differ in the amount of money that's actually paid. And again, depending on the training or the role you're playing will depend on how much we're willing to pay. So with more responsibility comes a little bit more money.
And this will all change a little because minimum wage is scheduled to change come this upcoming January. So currently our lowest paid positions are just over $14 an hour with minimum wage. Usually that then we end up bumping everything up by about $1 an hour. So our inspectors making $15, they'll go up to $16 an hour. And then we do pay like our T-techs $19 an hour here, and also our drivers $19 an hour as well. But okay, so other roles that we hire for at our central counting facility. So we have early ballot processing board. So these are 2-member teams, Republicans and Democrats. They can be Libertarians and Independents as well that serve in this role. But they're right. So every voter has a right to a constitutional right to a secret ballot. So no one knows how they voted. So when those early ballots come back to the elections department, you need that Republican, Democrat taking that ballot and separating it from that affidavit envelope, because that affidavit envelope has information that can identify then the voter, right? So it has a unique barcode that's assigned to that voter. That's how we're tracking it as we mail it out to the voter, and as it comes back to us, we know that they've returned their ballot. It also has that voter signature on it, right? And that's what the recorder's office used to verify that that ballot was cast by that voter and comparing it to a reference signature they have on file in the voter record. These early ballot processing boards, they'll sit together, they do counts, and they fill out all this chain of custody documentation, and then they transmit all of those to our actual tabulation center. So we go to the next. So in our tabulation process, we have full-time staff members that are working, but we just don't have enough full-time staff members to be able to handle the volume of ballots that come through and are counted. So we will hire operators as well to assist with that tabulation. You can see in some of these photos that the one on the top there is one of our high speed or high capacity scanners. And then on the bottom picture, it's something called adjudication. And in Arizona, both Yavapai and Maricopa County do something called electronic adjudication, which is was allowed for, approved in the 2020 cycle, and allowed for in statute. And it is such an improvement over the old process. So what used to happen is if someone did overvote, so that was something I talked about earlier on. If someone filled in 2 ovals, and there's only for a vote for one contest, and they clearly identified their voter intent, right? So federal law says if we election officials can tell a voter's intent, then we have to award that vote to that candidate. So voters sometimes will then cross out like that second oval, right? And they say, not this one, and they sit to the oval that they want filled in, they say, yes, this one. Well, at that point in time, we can tell that voter intent. So we hire electronic adjudication boards, and here statute says it has to be a Republican and has to be a Democrat that sit there working together. They fill out paper logs as they're making those determinations on that voter's intent. And then at the end of their shift, they print out a system generated log of what's about to be reported into results. And then they do a comparison, a 1-for-1 comparison with their manual paper log to their system generated log, because they're going to have to sign off at the end of their shift that every action they took. So that's part of that chain of custody piece. As I mentioned with our ballot couriers, the political party chairs do make appointments here for adjudication as well. So we offer that to those county chairs. If they want to make those appointments, they can. If not, we'll make sure that we hire that individual from the opposite party. Now there is someone else. So these are really three-member boards. So 2 judges, a Republican and Democrat. And then the inspector over those boards can be registered of any party. So that could be a Republican or Democrat. It could be an independent. It could be a libertarian. In Maricopa County, we won't hire the inspector from being part of a registered Republican or Democrat. We only hire them to be an independent or a libertarian, because in some instances, the 2 judges can't agree. Even though we provide them very consistent training, they may not agree. So then that independent inspector will then have to be that tiebreaker. So, but these are the roles within that tabulation process that we're also hiring citizens, community members, right, to come and assist us as we administer the election.
And in Yavapai County, we do not hire an inspector for the adjudication process because we only have usually one team of 2 people. I'm usually the designated as the inspector. If they can't make a determination, they'll come and get me. So how to get involved, and that's what we're here today, right? Is to get everyone involved. So there's a link there for Maricopa County where you would fill out an application of interest. And then up here, Yavapai County, we have a application for poll worker. And we also have an application for student poll worker. So if you know of any student who is over the age of 16, Scott, is that right? Yes, 16. They have an interest in serving. They would go and fill out that poll worker application, and they would also then have their school sign off and their parents sign off. And then they are excused that day then from their absence at school because they're serving as a poll worker.
Thank you, Lauren. So next few slides are mine. So one of the questions that we do get quite frequently is, what are we doing to keep the voting process safe, not only for voters, but all of our workers? So that's our permanent workers as well as our temporary workers. So I'm part of that role is the poll workers themselves. Another part is the political party observers. So these are individuals that are appointed by the parties. So they play a role in observing, are there any issues or threats out there that we would need to be concerned about. Our marshals, this is actually a responsibility that's assigned to them to just monitor for inappropriate activities that are occurring within that 75-foot line. So they're supposed to be going out and doing frequent rounds of the voting location to see if there could be any threats. But election officials in Arizona, we've really had to really lean in and make great partnerships with our local law enforcement. So in most counties, that's the local sheriff. We've for a long time had, we provide training to the specific unit. It's their civil division unit within our Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. They're very familiar with voter laws, and they are actually our first escalation. So if our troubleshooter, our inspector couldn't resolve the issue, then we send out that troubleshooter. That's that next person that's trained on election laws. If they can't resolve the issue, then we may have to then call in that special unit from the sheriff's office. Now, we recognize that a law enforcement presence at a voting location, just their presence could be an intimidating factor. So we've asked our sheriff's office that those first responders from law enforcement, that they're actually not in their full uniform. They're wearing a polo shirt. They will have an insignia on there identifying them as a Maricopa County Sheriff's deputy. They will have a sidearm as well, but they're not in that full uniform when they're responding to an issue. We also then partner with the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI. They're doing threat assessments and monitoring all the way leading up through the election cycle. In Maricopa County, Lauren was talking about their call center. Ours is called our command center. We invite a representative from the ACTIC, so that's the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center, to come work in our command center. They're also monitoring for threats as well as we go through that voting process. But really, if a poll worker is feeling threatened or that it's an immediate emergency, we train them to call 911. Right, and then that's the most immediate, fastest response. Is there anything else that you do different, Lauren?
No, I mean, as far as like keeping our system safe, we also have our IT as our informational technologies is going to be in our offices that night, monitoring our website, monitoring for any kind of security that way. So everyone's aware, everyone is on high alert. But again, yes, we don't want to have any kind of law enforcement out at those vote centers because that can be an intimidation. And we want them to be on call. We want them to be nearby. We want them to be aware.
And the one thing that we've done is, so there's over 20 different local law enforcement agencies in Maricopa County. So before every election, we invite them to come for a tour of our election center, but then also to meet with our sheriff here. So in Maricopa County, that's Sheriff Penzone, but also that Department of Homeland Security and FBI. So then they can be informed of what are our response procedures. So that does alleviate a lot of fear and concern from those other law enforcement agencies, right? And if for some reason they did have to respond to a 911 call, they know what to expect. So all of that prep work that goes into getting ready for an election. And here is a picture. So I mentioned our command center. So this is where we have staff members that are taking calls from poll workers, any issues that they're experiencing, whether they're technical issues. That's usually the most frequent or common, right? They've ran out of toner, they're having a printer issue, maybe they're having an issue with their on-site tabulator that we can then dispatch that T-Tech out into the field. But also when you think about elections and as Lauren was going through the slides and all those different bullet points for all those different poll workers, well, those all come from a very, very thick statute book that maybe I even have one.
Where's my book? I have one.
Right, this big, thick statute book right here, and the print in it is the smallest print you've ever seen. I know it's blurry, but you almost need a magnifying glass to be able to read that print. But there's no way we can expect our poll workers, well, I expect Penny to remember everything. But there's no way we can expect our poll workers to remember all those different statutes. So if they have a question about a voting process, then our command center serves in that role to help our poll workers as they go through and offer in-person voting operations.
I don't know, Scott, are you at the office or are you at home?
I'm at the office, yeah.
I work from home because our facility is going through a remodel, but I think it's kind of funny that we have this at our elbows at all times because it's just so important. This is our job right here.
And it's hard for us to memorize all of those, right? So it's constantly, well, what does it say? Let's go back and read it. And sometimes there's even different interpretations, right? So Lauren and I will get in these big arguments about how she interprets one statute or another. No, I'm joking. We rarely have a disagreement.
We do. That's why we get together as our EOA, Election Officials of Arizona, just to cover those. Now, how are you interpreting that? How can I do this better? What is your best practice? It's amazing. There's a question it says, can you tell us about the fee charged for student poll workers to apply as poll workers? Yavapai County does not have a fee for student poll workers. We don't have a fee. We don't charge anything.
Neither does Maricopa County. There's no fee. And here's actually
Lauren, it actually says it on the student poll worker application for the YavaPaiVotes.gov.
I'll have to look into that because that is not right.
Thank you for answering that. We were a little alarmed with that part. So are you ready and open for some questions?
Yes, but I did want to say,
oh, yes,
even with some of the criticisms and the things that election officials are going through, we get a lot of very positive feedback. And this is from the 2022 election. We're seeing it on Twitter, lots of thank yous throughout the day in the process. So we didn't source it to the exact person that posted it, but it did come from Twitter, just thanking them for the great experience that they had at one of our voting locations. Were you working here, Penny? Was that?
No, I wasn't. You know, I wasn't the one with a little bit of chaos, but we all overcame that. That was the important thing, you know, and everybody got to vote. So that was what was most important. Are you, Scott, may I introduce some questions, okay, that we have? Lauren, thank you for checking on that fee charge. That'll be great if you could do that. We want to encourage. So before I frame some questions in the time we have, I'd like to sort of interject some things that you both said that I want to uplift for everybody, okay? One is about staying safe. In addition, if you're not a poll worker, we encourage you to volunteer as part of the election protection observer teams, which sit outside of the 75-foot. They're not the official observers, but they can serve to mitigate and call 911 or call if there are any issues of escalation of violence. And often the service they provide is someone walks out and they ask them, did you get to vote? And they say, no, I didn't. And then they can help find out what the issue was and then escalate it to the hotline that's provided by the election protection. That hotline is in close contact with Scott and the other county elections directors, because we take the guidance from them. And so I urge you all, if you're not going to be a poll worker, consider doing that. It's an easy shift. Another plug for being a poll worker, Lorraine, who introduced Lauren earlier. It is rewarding. Do not apply because you want to make money. You're not. It might pay for your lunch for that day, okay? But really what you're doing is protecting democracy and saving democracy. So please don't look for the money. Our counties do the best they can to pay us. They need us. So if you've got neighbors around who you know ought to be doing something during this time period, send them Scott's way and Lauren's way. We will need a lot of poll workers. You know, there is an aging population of poll workers. Scott, you know that. We all know that. So the program you have to bring in the youth is so vital. You know, if ever we were going to convince a group of youth to make voting part of their life forever, ever, it would be to be a poll worker because they see democracy at work. So I wanted to uplift that. I want to uplift what you're doing. We hosted a conversation with the Scottsdale and the Mesa police chief about this issue. And they also raised the point about if you see it, say something. Okay. And so I encourage everybody to do that. Couple of questions. And I think it would be good to clarify this. And the first one has to do with the being off a particular party in the previous general election. Can you lean into that question a little bit more, please?
So state statute for specific roles. So the inspector role, the judge role, or the clerk role, right? In Yavapai, they have the ballot box judge and they have the other judge role. But if you're in one of those named roles of the inspector, a judge, or a marshal, you cannot have changed your party since the prior general election. So you can only then serve. So if you've changed your party, you can only serve as a clerk within as part of the voting board. So that is something to be cognizant of, right? Because for the upcoming March presidential preference election, and they haven't announced that both it's going to be the Democrats and the Republicans participating. That is a closed primary. So if you are an independent or party not declared, and you are deciding that you may want to participate and you do change your party, then you would not be able to serve as an inspector, judge, or marshal. You'd only be able to serve as a clerk.
The other question was regarding you know, can you waive what you're going to pay us so we can work for free? I mean, I know the answer, but Scott, it would be good for you and Lauren, not only to not just say no, but explain why, you know, because that would be helpful.
Lauren, I'll let you answer.
So the Board of Supervisors sets the pay for poll workers. We just, you know, I don't know, Scott, I'm kind of stumbling here, but we would just follow that's been set by the board. We would never not pay someone to be a poll worker. Okay. You had the question about the fee required. So are you talking about the last line there? It says pay $130 per election.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the pay that the student poll worker would make. They don't owe that money.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we'll change that verbiage to make it more clear that that's their wage. That's what we will pay them to be a student poll worker. So the student poll worker would make $135 per election in Yavapai County.
Okay. Scott, looping back, it's not just a matter of the Board of Supervisors setting a rate, but poll workers are employees of the county. So there's a labor law issue there, correct?
That's correct. So we are required to pay anyone that's an employee. We cannot accept donations of time. Now, the only volunteers through this process are the political party observers And those are not our employees. Those are appointees of the political parties. And they then go and do the observation at the voting locations as well as central count. The political parties also observe or appoint hand count board members. And that's one thing that maybe people don't always know, is after every election that has a federal contest on the ballot or a statewide contest or a legislative contest, there's hand counts that occur as part of before we canvass and certify the results. But those hand counts, why we help facilitate them, we give access to the political parties to the ballot so they can do the hand count. It's the hand count appointees that are doing that. And in that role, they are paid. They're not volunteers. But the only people that are volunteers are the observers.
And in Yavapai County, the poll workers, sorry, I lost the word there. The poll workers are considered contract employees. They're not employees of the county. So we will pay them a contracted fee.
It is 2:27. We said we would keep this event to 90 minutes. So we're about 3 minutes into our closing time. I want to thank Lauren and Scott for giving their Saturday afternoon to us. The information you shared was invaluable. The event is recorded and we will make it available on YouTube for anyone who wishes to go back and review. And please share this share the recording with your neighbors. We want to get Scott and Lauren all the help they need during this election cycle. So Lauren and Scott, will let you have the last word.
Well, I just want to thank again Amanda and Penny for inviting us and allowing this time to again showcase what we do and how we follow the laws of the state of Arizona in providing safe, fully staffed vote centers so that our voters have an opportunity to cast their ballots in all of elections, and how we then tabulate and adjudicate those ballots. So thank you so much for allowing us, for listening and your questions. We really appreciate it.
And this is Scott Jarrett, and as election administrators, it's incredibly important to us, right? We know we're help facilitating the election, but really these elections are the elections of the community, the residents of the counties in which we're living, right? And we could not do that great work without your support. In Maricopa County, my team is 49 members strong. That probably makes Lauren a little jealous that I have 49 members. She has 6. But we hire over 3,000 temporary workers. So really for every permanent worker in Maricopa County, we're hiring 54 temporary workers to help us facilitate those elections. And they come from all walks of life, every part of the political spectrum. And that is so important to us because that adds a big check and balance, right, over that process to make sure that we have Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, party not declared, independents, and probably moving forward, no labels, poll workers into our process. So please go to our websites to get involved in the election process if you haven't done so already. Thank you.
Amanda Lugo from All Voting is Local has put a document up on the chat. Folks, please do reference it. She has been maintaining a link to all the suggested URLs. Amanda and I will send out that document and all the contacts you have provided to all the folks who registered for this event. We thank you all for joining us. I'm Penny Sharan, and I am with the League of Women Voters. And I want to thank Amanda from All Voting is Local for being a good partner, and more importantly, keeping us straight and speaking slowly and making sure we identify ourselves as we speak. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope we'll see you again in October when we have our next session. Bye-bye.